Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of GeekVerse podcast. I am one of your hosts. Is that a monkey, Taylor Field? And I'm joined by.
Hey, I'm the Mark Caster, Dylan Musk.
Yes, unfortunately, we lost one of our own in the arena in the Coliseum. Unfortunately,
We wouldn't have it any other way than a duel here between. Well, I don't know. We'll see if me and you are allies or adversaries on this podcast
right.
based on our thoughts, I guess.
That's right. That's right. Because we're talking Gladiator 2 spoilers review. But before we get into that, a couple of plugs. You can find us with your internet connection in the search bar. GeekVerse.ca is our home base. GeekVerseCast is our Twitter. GeekVerse is our Facebook. Be sure to check us out on Patreon, where you get ad-free, early exclusive episodes available there. Also, the legendary folks that are on our Patreon producer tier, you guys are fantastic. April of Darkness, Aaron Braden, Jack Grant, Mud, Sam, Superbad Mike, God Loves Me 69, Jeremy Reiner, D Tall. You folks are fantastic. Love you all. You guys help keep the lights on. So, what else do we got going on here? We did a side quest, didn't we, Dylan?
Me and you, yeah. Look at us, two-man casts in a week. I feel like it's been a bit since that's happened, but it's intimate.
It's been a bit. It's been a bit. Yes. What else do we got going on right now? Me and Kirk are going to be dropping our Daredevil season 1 retrospective.
Ooh,
That'll be
goddamn,
dropping.
I'm excited for that.
I'm excited to chat about it. That's gonna be dropping early on the Patreon, and then it should be dropping. I think probably we're slating it for just very early December on the public feeds. So stay tuned for that. What do we got? We're going into December, so we got a lot of other stuff that we're going to be reviewing. We got like Sonic 3 and other movies that are coming our way, and I think we got Skeleton Crew, Star Wars, and we got Creature Commandos as well, DC's show. So lots of stuff that's going to be populating on our feeds. It's going to be a great time. No Wicked review unless you're doing that, Dylan.
Absolutely not. Nope.
No. Yeah, so there's that. Comic things in the chat. Anyone know where Travis went to? You know what? He's in the arena somewhere. He's in one of those coliseums. We're not sure. Oh, but you answered him. Oh, you answered him perfect. I didn't even catch that.
Right? I don't know. I think he's announced all this stuff. I don't know. Maybe I just spilled the beans. We'll see.
No, I think you're safe.
He'll be back. He's on
He'll be
hiatus.
back. Yeah.
Kirkland's just sick tonight. He got poisoned. So hopefully he didn't actually get poisoned. I'm making a Gladiator reference. He should be back in a few days.
He should be, hopefully, yeah. He's probably sounding like I sounded a few days ago, just not.
You transferred, yeah. You gave him the sickness.
Gave him the sickness, yeah. But, I mean, speaking of, sicknesses and poisonings and all that, what, Dylan, was your non-spoilers thoughts going into this movie?
Well, going into this movie, I had no non-spoiler thoughts, but when I was out of the movie, I generated some. Taylor, oh man, much like a banana, I am split on this one. I have so many thoughts, and I feel like I'm going to be all over the place, so bear with me here. And I think this is also a tricky one for me to talk about non-spoilers wise, so I'll give some more, maybe, hopefully coherent thoughts when we get to that section of the podcast. But this is a really interesting time, especially compared to Beetlejuice 2, which we watched earlier this year, which to me was like exactly what I want from a Legacy sequel, even though I didn't watch that movie until earlier this year as well, which is the same thing here for Gladiator. And so I feel like going into this, I kind of was expecting to really build off the events of the first one in a big way. And it was really throwing me off that I feel like the first half of this movie is not doing that whatsoever. And for most of this movie, even down to the end, I feel like this feels almost like a soft reboot or a remake to some extent. And obviously we are building off the characters and the time has passed. We're like 16 years later, whatever it is. But just in terms of the story beats, the pacing, even down to like the pacing of the battles, it feels so one-to-one to that original movie. So even though it's not a retelling of the story in the exact same way, just the characters that are new and introduced here feel like they're just trying to fit into that exact same mold as that first film, or maybe they'll take one character and kind of split their traits into two characters so we can break down all the details of that. But it was kind of throwing me off, and it was disappointing. Like I kind of wanted more of an evolution or something new and fresh and different, and I didn't really feel like I was getting that for most of this. And then I feel like when we get towards the end of the movie, it's like nostalgia bait headquarters, like just hucking, like shooting arrows at my face of nostalgia, and I'm just taking too many at the same time. So it was a very just huge rush between the two and a huge change. And I think overall, like the movie feels like that too, in terms of just my general thoughts of it. Once I kind of got over what the movie was, and I was kind of meeting it where it was. I feel like it's quite mixed as well. It's split in that same way where there are some characters that are really well written. I think my favorite character across these two movies is in here. I'm really excited to talk about that character. And then other ones feel much more flat than I was expecting or hoping, especially using once again that comparison of their counterpart from the first one. I think the battles are better shot this time around. I think some of the stakes or the flow of them isn't as good as the first one, but overall I think the battles are pretty good. The visuals look great. There's no like janky. Well, there's a couple janky CGI moments, but nothing too egregious. And yeah, I think that's maybe all I want to say in the non spoilers way. I'm very mixed on this one. I don't even know where I'm gonna be for a number review or a rating or a feeling at the end until we really break it down some more through the process of this review. And I'm really excited to see just in the Discord and elsewhere, Letterboxd, I guess, just see other people in our community see their thoughts on this, because I do feel like this is going to be a mixed reaction to this movie overall. I think there's going to be people who absolutely love it because as a popcorn flick, turn your brain off, I think it succeeds really well. Then I think when you maybe pick it apart, it crumbles a little bit. We'll see if I'm alone in that thought. So I'm excited to see those other people's thoughts. But Taylor, what are your thoughts? I got to hear.
Yeah, I feel a little split as well with this because on one side of the room you have a ton of action and a ton of really awesome choreographed battles and sequences that I was definitely engaging with and I was really enjoying. And then on the other side you have this the story and the characters where I feel like the characters, even our main character, where I feel like he is at the start he's one person and at the end he's kind of become this person, which I wasn't expecting him. Like he just, they set him up to become something different, and at the end it's just like, oh no, he's just, this is what they're doing with the character, that's it. And it's like, well, that just kind of defeats what he was standing for and what his ideologies were at the beginning of the film. It just kind of conflicted with his development a little bit, so that pulls me out of it. But I like how you said it. It kind of feels like a soft reboot, and at the same time, because they're trying to redo a few things, I guess, and kind of backtrack a little bit on how they did things with the story of the first one. And the downside is I feel like this movie was a bit predictable because it's just the way it starts, and then as things progress, it's like, well, this is almost scene by scene of what the first one was doing. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because like you said, there's gonna be people that are just eating this up, they're gonna be enjoying it, and I can take it in for what it is. And I'm not saying it's like, oh, this is a terrible movie. It's just something that I think I need to sit on a little bit more and talk about, because yeah, it's just, it has very similar story beats to that first one, and maybe that's just them trying to play it safe and try to stick with what they know and what they're doing. I was hoping that it'd be a little bit more bolder and a little bit more bigger, because I really did like what we saw in the trailers with, again, the action scenes and everything in the Coliseum, which that stuff is just great. It's fantastic, and they upped the ante from what they did in the first one and this one. There's some things I'm going to bring up when we get into spoilers. Like, I don't know how, like, if this is, I'm not a historian, so I don't know how historically accurate some of these things are, but what they just did, I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, is that even like, is that possible? Did they really do that back then? That's just crazy. But we'll see when we get into spoilers. Yeah. So I think I'll just shut up. Pedro, always fantastic. Oh my goodness, he was great in this, and unexpected too. I didn't actually know or anticipate what was going to be going down with his character, and so I really did enjoy him, his development, and just, yeah, his character in general. Really liked that. It was actually a big surprise in how he was introduced and where he kind of like headed off in his development.
I got a non-spoilers question for you about his character. What's his accent in this movie? Because I feel like half the time he's like American, half the time he's doing like pronouncing things in like a British way or like a
he's Mandalorian. That's what I'm telling myself.
It was all over the place. I love Pedro, but I was like, I don't know what his choice was here for an accent.
Yeah, that's hard to pinpoint. I feel like there was a few people, they had very, very different accents, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like there's not really a consistency to it. Like, you know, in the casting too, just getting people from all over the world. You know, you're gonna actually kind of have some mix in there, unless everyone's like a total expert at this stuff.
Yeah. Is there anything else you have not in spoilers that you want to showcase?
Maybe just one quick mention here is I feel like the music I didn't notice at all in this
No
movie, which
pirates themes.
yeah, which is funny because as we talked about in that retro, like going back to that and being like, wow, Pirates just totally ripped off the same. Well, it was the same composer, but just totally ripped off the exact same theme. It was funny going into this, and I feel like this movie was trying to distance itself from that, which, as we talked about in the retro, is like it'd be hard if they just used the same theme, but now people just know it as the Pirates theme. But I don't feel like I noticed any track or any theme or any music across this whole thing. I don't know how you felt about that, but it just felt a little more generic this time around. Even if it did feel maybe a bit generic because it felt like it was copying something that came out later. But
Yeah, I would agree. I can't see this really being in the running for any score awards or anything like that
no,
because there isn't really anything. There was just the odd beat that was pulled from the original movie, like on a Marcus Aurelius kind of
okay,
theme or something like that. That I felt like, but they're very short bits. It was like it'd be like a 30-second audio clip. It's like, oh yeah, I think that beat was from like the first movie, but nothing that was really making this kind of stand up on its own and giving it its own originality. And yeah, it's just something unfortunately very forgettable because I can't recall any like fantastic musical sequences in this
hmm
movie at all. Just a lot of like clashing and clanging and screaming. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was a rock and a hard place in terms of reusing that theme from the first one, so they kind of just had to go a different direction. And I don't know, maybe on a rewatch, if I'm listening on Spotify, it'll stand out more. But
mhm.
something I didn't when I got out, I was like, oh yeah, I don't feel like I noticed any music at all. I know it was there, but can't say I noticed it. I
Yeah,
think that's all I have for non-spoiler thoughts here.
that's all I got. I guess in closing for me, when I went into the theater, it was pretty light. There wasn't a lot of people. Now I knew that there were the row I wanted. I knew that there were two seats taken dead center, and I was gonna go there, but I couldn't get it
Okay.
because other people had them. So I did two seats over from that spot, the center of my row. And so when I sat there, I thought, okay, well, those people never showed up, but I'm just gonna sit in my seat. And then the movie starts. For like 5 minutes in, then a whole group of people come in and they sit down, and it's like they got the whole row, but I'm pulling a Travis here. They sit like right next to me, which in retrospect, it's kind of okay because I was going to see this by myself, but I felt like what, I got some like not make believe friends, but I got some like temporary friends here to enjoy this movie with. Um,
You're
Aside
like
from
the
that,
audience in the Coliseum, just
that's
cheering
right.
at everything.
That's right. There were two little kids, little boys in the very
Okay.
front row with their dad, and the one kid had to have been under 10 years old. And I thought, man, that's a bold
Yeah,
choice to bring your
there's
son to
limbs
this.
getting chopped.
Yeah.
There's some crazy
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
There's some definite crazy stuff, some close-up shots of things, but yeah, I'm not planning to do that with my kid anytime soon. But to each his own. If you want to, just show them this testosterone of a feature, then be my guest.
Yeah, I'm not
Uh,
gonna stop them. They can do whatever they want.
that's right. But yeah, okay. We are going to get into some spoilers after this quick ad break, so we'll be right back. And we are back. So, where do we want to start?
Well, I feel like I've been doing this. I've been pulling the Kirkland lately. I just want to start at the beginning, but I did want to ask about that because this movie opens up with I forget what happens first. Whether it's kind of like the AI image montage thing that's going on of like the first movie, or if it's the crawl. I think it goes in that order. Not really a crawl, but it's just like three, a little paragraph worth of information of like here's what's
Hmm.
happened between the events of the first movie and this, and that honestly immediately put like a very bad taste in my mouth. I was like, okay, 16 years have passed, and you know what? The events of the first movie, they don't really matter because some bad guys came in and now they're running Rome, and here you go. Welcome to the movie. So I didn't like that at all because I feel like it really takes away from like Maximus's journey in the first movie. I get that this is Rome. There's people constantly going for the throne, going for the assassinations, but I feel like as an audience, we need to see some of that or feel like what our hero did in the first movie is like gonna have some positive consequences, and it doesn't. And then I feel like by the end of the movie, we're kind of bringing some of the Maximus stuff back, and it's like, okay, I guess it's maybe a full circle moment. But I was immediately thrown off, and it took me like a half an hour before I was like, okay, I've cooled. I'm no longer enraged that they did this, and then I could like see the movie where it was at. So how did you feel about just like those opening lines of dialogue, or just written lines even?
So I think the intro getting like kind of like painted flashbacks of the first movie, I thought that was very cool. That was getting me hyped up. But yeah, once we got the brief little opening crawl there, where it was just talking about, yeah, 16 years has passed, I believe, and
Hmm.
twin emperors have taken over, and Maximus's dream has kind of just been forgotten. It's like 16 years and his dream has been forgotten. Fuck, that's not good. 16 years. I can see 60 years, but 16, Jesus. So that was definitely a little bit of a setback. And it in retrospect too, what really bothers me is they this is kind of jumping ahead. It shows when Lucius is being sent away right after Maximus dies in the arena, and then Lucilla takes, I think her name was Lucilla, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
you got it.
takes Lucius and is like, okay, we need to get you out of here because people are going to be coming to assassinate you. So you get a little bit of insight there. But it's funny because the scene right before that is Maximus saying Lucius is safe. And then Lucilla's like, people are going to be coming to kill you. We got to
Right.
get you out of here. It's like, well, that's kind of a little bit like counterproductive in the way they're telling the story. It's a little weird. So Maximus is really just like, he died thinking everything was peachy. And no, it was worse.
Yeah, he died. He died for nothing, seemingly, and it's kind of weird because as we just mentioned, like, yeah, kind of near the end of the movie, like the dream of Maximus is kind of back, where Lucius is like, I am the son of Maximus, and that seems to inspire people. But I kind of feel like what inspired them more was the death of Acacius, of Pedro Pascal's character, and then him being like, "Is this what you want? Your heroes are shot down," or whatever he says, that like monologue there. That seems to fire up the people because right after that, I mean, one, people are fighting in the stands, throwing fists with the guards in their bow and arrows there, but then also in the streets after that, there's the whole there's riots going on, and then it seems like it
Yeah.
just kind of cools. Unknowing, I don't really know why it cooled. I don't know if we were just cutting to scenes where people were in quiet places, and then we kind of get right into the finale of the movie, so we don't really get resolution on like the people of Rome because we don't really know much about Rome as a people in this. You know, we just get like the 1% pretty much in this movie. Just get like the higher ups. So yeah, it was kind of a weird choice, and as you mentioned too, and once again, as I talked about, I'm gonna be going everywhere on this review because that's how I feel with this movie. That Lucilla thing really bothered me as well because I feel like she's putting her son presumably somewhere safe to keep him safe, but like also has no idea where she's sending him, and then has no way to contact him or retrieve him as she's like still in the know with everyone going, and she knows that like Rome is just actively going around killing societies, presumably killing a society of a place that she knowingly sent her son. Like there's a lot of questions there I have in terms of why she would do that. And it's like, well, he could have just died there at any second in any one of these places. So it feels like, well, wouldn't he have been safer in Rome near you, where you actually had, like know people instead of just sending them off to be in the middle of nowhere? So I didn't honestly, just the use of Lucille in this movie, I think was very weak and not a great evolution of what her character was in the first one. Considering that she's one of the very few people that actually comes back. Like Lucius comes back, but it's a different actor. But we get her and Gracchus, I think, are like the two actors that come back that I can think of off the top of my head. So yeah, I was not a big fan of her decision making there, and it's not a really fleshed out decision. Like that's the thing. I wonder if there's maybe a like deleted scene or two that explore her decision to do that more. But as you mentioned, like the first movie, it kind of feels like a legacy sequel where they expect the audience to have not watched the movie in 20 years, and so they're not paying close attention to like the choices or words or things that were done or said in that first movie, more just having that foggy 20-year-old memory of it and
Right,
go to the
right.
movie, which is a weird problem. It's a hard problem to solve, I think, as a filmmaker when you're trying to appease both audiences, of like hardcore fans, people who are rewatching it, or just nostalgic people. So yeah, it's hard to make those decisions, but I didn't love what they did with her character overall.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that for sure. It's yeah, she's just uh everything that they were doing with that kind of narrative, it really does undo just a lot of the established narrative in the first one. And I just don't buy it because I feel like in the end of that first one, like they had things secure. Commodus was out, and they basically had Maximus's army. I'm pretty sure was like storming in there eventually. So the Senate was in control. They had Maximus's army. They had the Praetorians were also on their side too. So everyone was on her side. But no, she still felt threatened. That basically she had to get Lucius out of there. And again, it's just very weird because Lucius has this first encounter with her and is basically like, I don't remember, I don't know who you are, I don't remember anything. And, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, fuck Rome.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now he cares about Rome and turning Rome into what it can be, and he wants to be the emperor and all this stuff. And it's like, well, that's just very weird writing at this point. Why is he kind of betraying his ideals, as I mentioned before in the non spoilers too? And again, I understand that he had his wife, he loved his wife, and then you have Pedro's character come in, and Pedro's character who reluctantly is taking over the city, gets the wife executed or killed in the heat of combat. I feel like they're kind of um like kiss and make up kind of session, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was way too rushed. And
Yeah.
then it just cuts to Pedro just being Boromired like crazy.
Oh
So
my God, Boromir times 7. He got
yeah.
absolutely devoured. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think some of that stuff was really messy, and as you mentioned, like I feel like uh, we'll make a lot of these comparisons of like, oh, here's this character from Gladiator 1, and here's what they did with Gladiator 2, and I feel like the character of Maximus, they kind of split into Acacius and Lucius, and kind of had all the elements of what Maximus is, in terms of like, oh, the wife dying, turning into this vengeful story to go back against Rome, being put, back through the gladiator thing and having to go through on that whole journey. A lot of that stuff is like very similar in a 1-to-1, even though it's kind of split into those two characters. But I feel like one of the things with Maximus and some of the tough decisions he has early on in that movie, in the first one, is that the king really trusts him and wants him to be the next successor, because not just because he's a good fighter, but because he's been around, he has a lot of knowledge on like the political side, and he would be a good leader, and he's a good person. The king feels he's a good person. But Lucius, like as this movie's going along, getting to the end, I feel like it gets pretty messy, and I'm like, who are we supposed to be rooting for as a viewer? Because like I kind of hate everyone in Rome. They all suck. Everyone in these other societies, they're all like slave owners and shitty as well. And then like, okay, so I'm supposed to believe that Lucius is going to come in and he's going to change Rome, but he doesn't like know anything. Like I guess he was a kid there, and he like when he was a kid, he was there with Commodus and Lucilla, and he was maybe learning some stuff, but he was like 8 or something at the time, right? Or would they say 8 or 10 or 12 when he
12.
Yeah, 12 when he got kicked away. So it's not like he was gaining a ton of political knowledge at that time. I feel like he was more just being babied and coddled. So much so that Lucilla sent him away when he potentially was in danger. But it's like I don't believe, especially after watching the first movie, and Maximus was this great leader that people loved, and even though he died, it was still like, okay, everyone was wanting to make a better Rome for him, and that didn't happen, clearly, as we saw with that crawl, just kind of overwriting that information. But am I supposed to believe that Lucius is going to come in and with no like political knowledge, he doesn't know how any of that stuff works, he's just a raw fighter, and he has no allies at this point? Like, people are going to work for him, but he doesn't really have any friends anymore. Like, he's going to lead a better Rome? Yeah, right. Like, he's going to be usurped in like 5 seconds, and it's going to be the same fate. So I just feel like by the end of the movie, I was like, I don't really know who to root for. I don't think it really matters how you root for, because the first movie, the people were rooting for won, and I mean, some of them died in the process. They won, and none of it really seemed to matter anyway. So I feel like Gladiator 3, it's going to be like, within 2 months, Rome was overthrown by a new evil government. It's going to last much less than 16 years.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I think you nailed that comparison between Lucius and, I keep forgetting Pedro's name. Araxis, is that it?
Acacius? I don't know if it's Acacius or Acacius.
I like
It's
Acacius.
Acacius.
Yeah, sounds like an Acacius.
You can call him Pedro. That works too.
Pedro. So Pedro and Lucius characters, they are definitely like a combination of what Maximus was in that first one. This is where I thought, okay, things are really paralleling that first film, because you get, again, the opening sequence being this big battle, just like we had the first one, and you got your commander, your general, I guess, Pedro, and this is where it expedites, because all of a sudden Pedro goes back home, he's in Rome, and he has a bit of engaging with the emperor. He's like, oh, I want to retire. And they're like, no, we got Persia, Africa, India, all to conquer these places. He's like, okay. And then he goes home and he's like, I can't take it anymore. My army's going to be here in 10 days and we're taking over. I'm like, holy shit. This is the ending of Gladiator 1 with what Maximus had as a plan. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we already know what's going to happen here. The plan is going to go sideways. There's no way it's going to work out. even in his death, I guess the plan still happens because the army is still showing up. But I mean, I feel like you're right because you were saying that he had definitely had more implications on things that were going on than Lucius did. Lucius just happened to be there to kill Denzel and was like, he just gave a speech, and I don't know. There are like, there's 11,000 people on this battlefield, and only like the front line of 50 are going to hear what he's saying, and the other ones aren't going to know, and just be kind of confused, right? So
I know. I wonder that too when they're like making speeches in the Coliseum, and like it seems like it's designed to have really good acoustics. So even if they're not speaking into some like trombone thing that's gonna or a microphone that's gonna shoot it out, like I guess people can still hear when Pedro's like very quietly giving a speech. I don't know. I'm supposed to believe that, but yeah, to your point, like in the middle of a battlefield when it looks really windy too, like I don't think any of them can hear. So it's like going to be the people in the front who hear it, and then they kind of whisper it to the people in the back. And It's
yeah,
like a game of telephone where the people in the back just hear like a very distorted version of what it actually is. But yeah, it's odd that like okay, the power of Rome at this point is they say there's 6,000 soldiers in Rome ready to go. That's the Roman army.
yeah,
But then like Acacius's army is 5,000, so it's like a very close amount, and they're just like out chilling at like some camp, like a day away. I don't know what they do. I guess they just sit around until Acacius comes back and orders them to go kill like some new society. But if not, they're just kind of sitting around. It's kind of odd. Maybe that's the way it was historically. I don't know, but it is a bit odd pacing wise when you're kind of getting set up for this huge big battle. I didn't expect there would be a big battle at the end. I thought it would kind of end amicably, and it did. But I guess that's a slight difference because in Gladiator 1, we do get that army kind of arriving to Rome, right? And then the coup kind of gets overthrown. So it works a little bit differently than it does in the first movie, at least a little bit.
yeah. And I have to say, like, that sequence was freaking awesome just to see visually, just to see the Praetorian army, like 6,000 troops just coming out of Rome, and over the hillside you see like 5,000 like Roman legionnaires coming. It's like, holy shit! Like I know they're not gonna fight, and I don't need them to fight, but just to see this setup, I got big like RTS like
Total War
flashbacks,
vibes.
like oh yeah, it's like Total War, like Strong Crusader, just setting up like the armies and just seeing them, and I was like, oh, this is just like so cool just to see this right now. Which again, like another positive, like just a testament to the intro battle. Like Gladiator 1, that is such an iconic opening sequence with that fight scene. But the one that we got here with the naval combat was just, that was something else. And I'm watching this engagement unfold, and I'm just thinking in my head, like, again, I'm not a historian, but to see the organization and to see, I don't know how accurate, but I could probably confidently say that this is probably pretty accurate to the way that they detailed the ships and the siege equipment, and just how the Romans were just coming in, and just their power and their tacticalness. And oh my God, it was just it's just something that I feel like it's a shame that we kind of forget about this. Like we look at this and this is a part of our history, like how it's horrible and it's brutal, it's war and chaos and bloody and everything bad, but the it's gonna sound weird, the brilliance of it, and just how organized they were, and just how they had this equipment, like they got boats with siege towers on them with the ramps dropping down, and like just how they were
Sometimes
like
you forget how
storming.
big like a pirate ship type boat can be,
Yeah, like it's
until you
just
play Skull and Bones, and then you
until
really
play
get the
Skull and
scale.
Bones. Yeah, it's just it's so cool to just like behold and just to witness. I think that's where a movie like this is great on the big screen, because you can really just like take it in for just like the sheer like chaos and the awesomeness that is portrayed. That some of the CGI that was kind of like a con for you at the start there?
No, honestly, that first battle, the siege of the city, no notes. It's perfect. I think it was so much fun. It was a Lord of the Rings scale battle for me. It even had like I always talk about with the Lord of the Rings battle. I just love the phases of it. And so you have the boats coming in, and then like the trebuchets, the catapults, all firing off. And then, yeah, like the siege, like they assemble the tower kind of live there, break the bridge down. The bridge isn't working. Pedro runs around. He's the only one apparently strong enough to slash a rope. So he does that. And then they fly into the city. And then there's archers up on the wall. And they all start firing in. Oh, get them up on the wall. And then we turn the battle out that way. Like it was so much fun. I love that sequence. I think my CGI issues are just like mostly the monkeys. The monkeys in that one arena looked a little CGI monkey. I don't know what. I don't even know what they were. I get they called them monkeys, but I've never seen a monkey like that before. That's like an ancient Roman monkey for sure. It's like a closer to a hyena than a monkey, but it was terrifying. But it was also like very very CGI. That was kind of my main beef with some of these animals. But yeah, I think that battle looked fantastic. The lighting of it as well, I think was great. Just the look of the city, the look of the boats, and even just the really sad end of it, where you have all the prisoners, captives, just kind of all sitting out on the side, and then they just have like a sea of bodies. Like it looks like a pond or like a small lake or something like that, and then they just throw the torches in and just burn all the bodies at once. As you said, really, really terrifying and a scary thought that it's like, man, that those kind of things happened on this earth, hundreds thousands of years ago. But yeah, it was a super duper well done battle. Yeah, I think that one was awesome. And it's funny how, once again, that, as you mentioned, like the Germania battle is kind of the biggest scale battle in the first movie, and so that they followed that. I feel like in general the battles follow very much the same rubric or template as that first movie, of starting with the big Germania battle. You get the smaller arena outside Rome. You get that battle there, a smaller scale one. And then you get the Roman battle that's like a replication of a battle that happened elsewhere. And then you have the battle between just two guys, and then you have some chaos at the end. So it very much follows that same battle and like intensity structure as the first movie did.
Yeah, no, that's right. I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and say that they were baboons.
Okay. Interesting.
Like very malnourished.
They definitely looked like they definitely starved them so that they would just go buck wild on these gladiators when they got the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of that battle?
With the baboons?
Yes, with the baboons.
That's just, yeah, it's terrifying, because I feel like you're in the situation, and I think he was very lucky. Lucius is very lucky to be dealing with only one baboon, because I feel like, okay, you could have one come from the side, like a third one could gang up on you, like who knows? But no, he went full Animal Kingdom there, Craven the Hunter, and managed to like fight this one baboon off pretty well. I mean, he's eating it as he's fighting it and stuff, which I kind of got a chuckle out of that. How it was like the running joke when the guy's like, I know you eat monkeys, and then he sits down with all the other gladiators there making monkey noises at him. So I thought that was kind of,
I like that. Yeah, I like that didn't turn into classic high school movie thing of like they're always picking on him and he's like the little nerdy guy in the corner. Like he was laughing during that dinner scene as well, kind of, self-own in a way, just like laughing about it a little bit. And then like no one ever really mentions it again. Like they're not holding it over his head of like, oh, this guy's a freak. You're a freak, Peter Parker. It's more just that like it was just a funny thing that happened, but he still obviously became the leader. That didn't stop that from happening.
Yeah, that's right.
One I don't know if I want to call it a minor beef or otherwise, but I think they were really setting up our character here, Lucius, to be, as we mentioned, like kind of the replication of Maximus. And I think it's good that they take some deviations, but one deviation I didn't like, but then again, maybe I'd be coming with the opposite of criticism if they just copied it from the first one, is I think Maximus in all these battles, even back to that very first one, was so much about the team of it. And obviously we had seen him leading an army in the start of the movie, so it made sense that he had that background. But I feel like Lucius as a character, they were trying to build him up in that same way, and that he was a great leader, and it got to that point where he was leading, especially in that boat battle. But I feel like to that point, we never really saw him working as a team. Like during the Rhino battle, he's telling everyone like a general strategy, but I kind of feel like it was just a one-on-one battle that whole time. And like especially weirdly, after he baits the rhino into the wall, the rhino knocks itself out. The rhino rider jumps off, and they fight. Why aren't the other gladiators jumping in to help Lucius at that point and just kill?
They throw up a shield.
That's it. Like they should have, like as you said, like a baboon. They should have been swarming that guy and just take him out. So that was weird. Maybe that just shows how they don't want to work together, or they only care about themselves. I don't know. But even in that baboon battle, I was kind of hoping for a bit more teamwork between them. And then I guess I also found it a bit odd that in that fight, based on what we saw him do, which was like I feel like he barely beat that baboon, to be fair, and he only fought one. Because of that, Macronus was like, oh, that is my boy, that is my avatar, that is my gladiator. So all of this is like based off of this one thing. But I feel like everyone else, except for the guy who sacrificed himself, wins that battle as well and succeeded against their baboon. So I don't know what he did that was so special, and obviously he was correct because Lucius was a great battler, great fighter. But it just seemed a bit odd that there was really no teamwork there. It's not like Lucius was leading the charge, but not, as I said, like everyone else kind of survived that, so it didn't seem to be a very difficult battle actually at all. But still, it was the one that Macronus was like, "Oh damn, that's my boy." So some odd pace in there in terms of Lucius being the kind of de facto leader, and maybe it's good that he's not just such an obvious chosen one type character, but like I don't know, he still is. It's just shown a bit differently in the battles.
Yeah, yeah. I felt bad for his friend. You know, they were obviously good buddies in the kingdom there before they got taken over by the Roman legionnaires, and then they were thrown into the arena. And his friend, like Lucius, is just like, okay, stay close to me. And then his friend just kneels down and just gets fucking mauled by baboons, just like right away. God damn, that's not how I want to go. I don't want to be just have my vocal cords
Especially
ripped
after
out.
Lucius was like, "Please fight and stay alive. I need you, dude. You're my friend. I look up to you. You're my leader."
Yeah.
And he just gives up instantly. He's like, I want nothing to do with this lifestyle."
Yeah, he was down and out. Not good, not good.
Not good.
But I like what you said though about him and the leadership qualities in comparison to Maximus, because yeah, he's really not portrayed as that leader at the start. It develops for sure with the naval battle, and then at the very end when he's boosting up his gladiators and they're gonna go attack and save Lucilla. But at the start in that arena with the baboons, there's nothing of that, no leadership at all. But when we get to that first arena in the Colosseum, or the first battle in the Colosseum, and he's actually giving them just the advice, you still have that one guy that's like,
Of course.
fucking cowards. And like, what does he do? He's running with his back to the rhino, and the
No
guy's got
sense,
the little
yeah.
like ball and chains and
The bull is.
uh,
Yeah.
hooks him.
Yeah, which is exactly like the first movie, right? In that exact same sequence when you have all the people shielding with the chariots coming in, and there's the one guy who like doesn't want to work with him, doesn't want to follow the plan, wants to do his own thing and dies for it. So that was a funny similarity too in terms of the pacing of the movies.
Yeah, and getting to that second arena battle, that was no, I don't know. Again, historically accurate. If they actually got big ass sharks, great whites in an arena like that, that's and like not just one or two, but they had like at least over 10 in there. That was crazy. I don't know how they did it. That's some state of the art architecture and like development in that little arena to do something like that. I thought it was cool. It was freaking awesome to see it, but just the concept behind it, if it's accurate, that's what I want to know. And I got to look into that if they actually were putting sharks in the Roman Colosseum.
I would wager that it is not real. That would be my presumption. Yeah, a little bit of suspension of disbelief is needed there, and that's another situation where like these sharks cruising around is very CGI heavy. I'll leave it at that. I did think that they had an odd strategy. Well, both good and an odd strategy where Lucius and the squad, their goal is, okay, let's fuck up the oars of our opponents here, and then they can't maneuver around, and then we can have our way with them. So they do that, and then they like duck at the right time to dodge the arrows. They reposition the boat, and then they ram into it to break it in half. And I feel like at that point, isn't the idea to like break the boat in half and then just like scoot out of there and let them just die to the sharks? But like as soon as they crash into their boat, which is like it's sinking in seconds, they all jump off the boat, or at least Lucius does, jumps off their boat onto the worst boat, like the strategically worst spot to be to like fight down there. So I don't know, maybe it's nitpicky, but I felt like odd strategy. And yeah, I feel like the team Rome there had no plan. They had no leader. They had no Lucius. They had no Maximus, because no one had any clue what they were going to do. Even though like going into that fight, they would know what the fight was going to be. Presumably, I assume that the people on Roman side are given like the stats of like you're going to fight this many people in this many places. These are the traps. These are that kind of thing. And yeah, I feel like they had no plan going in.
Yeah, I think, going in, taking out the oars and the shards splintered up and like killed some of those guys. That was good. And then yeah, ramming it after the fact too and disabling their ship permanently. That was pretty good. But in the sequence of them doing these things just didn't really make sense to me. And I'm not like a master strategist, and I wasn't there in that situation, so I was just watching it unfold. But for me, I think, okay, the gladiators don't have long range weaponry, so maybe that's why they had to ram that boat right away and then board it, because they had to take them out, because maybe it wasn't deep enough where the ship would fully sink below the water, and
It did
then
look
if
pretty
you
shallow. Fair
it was
enough,
pretty
yeah.
shallow. So if you disable it by ramming it, then back off a little bit, well, they can still pick you off. And they did lose a fair bit of guys at doing the ore destruction and then like circling around to do
It's
the
risky
ramming.
strategy for sure.
Very risky.
Easy can easily go wrong. I mean, even Maximus's or Maximus Lucius's Rhino strategy also high risk, high risk, high reward. Clearly, but yeah, sketchy move.
Yeah, very sketchy. I did like when that was the first time Lucius like grabs the dirt and like is picking it up, and Lucilla's just like chills, just
Yes,
like, oh my gosh, and she kept
I've
sniffing her
seen someone
lavender.
pick up dirt before.
Yes,
And stab their sword into the ground in this exact
that's
same
right,
way.
exactly. I can't remember though with the lavender if that was a reoccurring thing from the first one, if she was doing that in that movie, or I was trying to think like why is she in all her scenes she's sniffing
Oh
lavenders, like what is the significance of that?
God, I'm trying to remember what he says. Like Maximus, what his favorite? Because doesn't he isn't lavender a thing in the first one as well? He's talking about herbs and stuff.
I'm gonna take a look here. Let's see.
But you're good point. I kind of forgot about that. But you're right. I feel like there's a lot of imagery of her rocking some herbs there.
Yeah,
No obvious connection.
no obvious connections, no, but there's gotta be something, I'm sure. But
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to be a farmer and he wanted to farm things like that. So maybe lavender was in the equation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Should we bring in this question from Tyler? I think this is a great question that I'm really excited to get into. Did I forget something from the first movie, or is it never mentioned in the first movie that Lucius is Maximus's son? As far as I can remember, they just changed it for this movie. So this is fun because in the retro for the first one, we talked about this, and all three of us, me, you, and Kirkland, said, yeah, it's possible based on what the movie here. Like, they never answer it. It's odd that they don't answer it, given it's such a big plot point. It's plausible that he could be the son, but probably not. And none of us wanted it. That was, I think, the biggest takeaway in that discussion was none three of us wanted that to be the writing in this movie, for that to be the connection point. So, how do you feel now that you've seen the movie and that is confirmed that Lucius is in fact Maximus's son?
I'm still not a big fan of it. I feel like they backtracked because the way I took it in that first movie was Maximus and Lucilla had a relationship, and then they went their separate ways, and then they found partners after the fact, and then had kids. But now,
Which also
it's
makes sense
just-
because their sons in that movie are around the same age, it looks like, right?
Yeah.
So you would think that they had their kids around the same time. So
Yeah,
Maximus was
exactly.
really close with when he had his kid. Did he hook up with Lucilla, clearly?
Yeah, and so we get this whole sequence here where they're just talking about how the rumors were like, oh, the rumor was it was Communus
Right.
that was with her. And then, oh, no, the rumor was, okay, well, she was with, I guess the father's name was Lucius as well. So she was with him, and he didn't fancy her. He fancied men. And so that's where, okay, well, really, like, that's why she had, lovers and whatnot, like Maximus, who obviously was the father of the son, which is kind of like the go-to here. So, yeah, I mean, there again, it's just them soft rebooting and or retconning kind of the pre-established narrative that they already whipped up, right? Which is just, it's a little bit weird. Maybe they just thought like, this is actually a good kind of story plot. Let's stick with this. Let's just run with it. I would have liked it if they just kept it kind of ambiguous and not actually give us that confirmation like he is Maximus's son. I think you could have him be this character that, again, he looked up to Maximus in that first movie, and so have it set up where he's still looking up to him and wants to represent everything that Maximus believed in. That would have been good enough for me. I didn't necessarily need it to be like, oh yeah, he's the son.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love it, but I think I dislike it less than I thought I would based on that retrospective. I'm not going to go as far as to say that it's a retcon, because I do feel like the first movie did leave it ambiguous whether or not that was the case. And I think, as we just talked about with the ages of the sons, it is a bit, it's like, oh, Maximus, you were really, really close to when you got with your wife, clearly, like when this happened, it seems, based on just like judging how old those actors look, which maybe we're digging too much into the weeds there. But yeah, I guess even in this movie, like technically she says that to him. She could just be saying it as a way to motivate him because she knew that he did look up to him. But then she also does tell it to Acacius, which feels like, okay, I don't know why she would necessarily do that. Or maybe she just said it to him so that Acacius would have this way to bond with him in the arena when they're thrown against each other. So I guess you could make the case that she was just saying that, and it's not confirmed. But I feel like that's a bit of copium, I think, to go about it that way. And I feel like it is kind of just confirmed at this point. But we really don't know. It's not like we get a flashback scene of them going at it. It's not like they bring back Russell Crowe to like film this scene. So I don't know. It technically could still be ambiguous, but I feel like it's pretty hard to believe that train of thought. I think it does make sense from that perspective. Lucius did really look up to him, and these things of replicating his movements, stabbing the sword on the ground, picking up the sand. Obviously, like near the start of the movie, when he's in the fields, he's like playing with the rice or the grain, whatever, and he's doing like a very similar thing. So even before he knows about that, he's doing some of these things that are very similar to Maximus. And yeah, okay, it could be like a DNA thing. He is his father's son, but also like that kid just really looked up to Maximus and watched a lot of his battles and was stoked to be able to talk to him. So he could just be like looking up to him and trying to, conscious or unconsciously, just like kind of replicating the movements of his hero in a way. So I don't know. I feel like there is some elements of it that I think are fine. I think where I don't really like it is I felt like the part with Acacius thrown into the ring with Lucius at the end and being like, wait, stop, don't kill me. Let's have this conversation. And he's like, I looked up to Maximus and I love your mother. Like, I did not like that at all. I felt like that was very, very cheesy. I feel like also Lucius, like, I don't know, at what point did his hate or like his revenge tale turn from I want to kill Acacius to I guess it turned to I want to kill the emperors and like overthrow them and like start a new Rome. But I kind of feel like even if that was his goal, he would probably still want to kill Acacius because Acacius did directly have his wife killed. So to me, it felt like, given that was the first scene that really turned Lucius on and his perspective of Acacius, I didn't really buy into him having that turn of wanting to not kill him and get revenge for his wife. Because even like we talked about Maximus, it's like, okay, he's kissing Lucilla by the end of the first movie. Like, is he doing this for his wife? Does he forget about his wife already? Now we know there's potentially more baggage if like he has a kid with this lady. Obviously that changes a lot of that conversation that we had. But like at the end of this movie, I guess Lucius is thinking more about Maximus than his wife, but he is still like very much right to the end of the movie having those visions, which are similar but different than the visions Maximus was having of picturing his wife in kind of the afterlife or entering Valhalla or whatever the Roman equivalent would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. There's a point I wanted to bring up, and I will do so after this quick ad break. And we are back. I still can't remember what my point was, but
Acacius, was something with Acacius? I am curious how you feel about Lucius's turn there and not wanting to kill him. Like, do you feel like that was justified based on their scene together there, or am I missing maybe another scene of context that you can think of?
Was not justified. I needed more time between them because the last time they confront each other, Lucius is firing a crossbow up at the stands to try and execute him on the spot, right? Like, it's just, we need more connection between the two. So it's very unfortunate we didn't get that because, yeah, him just kind of like down on his knees, waving his hands, like apologizing and whatnot. That's not necessarily good enough. It would have been nice to get a little bit more build up, even if he's like, he visits Lucius in the Gladiator pits and like he's like chained up and can't fight back, and you have him kind of like confront him a bit, tell him the truth and stuff like that. And then like even Lucius say like, you killed my wife, everything. Like, there's so much that could have just been kind of explored a little bit more, but they didn't dive into that, so it's a shame. But again, like, Pedro's fantastic. I think he did a great job as that character. Yeah, and he just, I think everything with him, like, we got more between Acacius and the emperors, and I did like all that stuff. I thought that was very fitting. But in the end of all things here, which he just kind of became like a martyr, because when Acacius was just shot down and then everyone's just freaking out, and you already brought this up, but just the speech that Lucius had, like, this see how they treat their heroes? Do you think they'll treat you any better? Kind of stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm a bit on the opposite side of the golden Roman coin from you on. Like, I love Pedro, but I was pretty disappointed with him in this movie. I mean, that ending scene does not help, and then I explain why I don't like that. But to me, I felt like out of most of the characters here, he was the one that felt the most derivative of a character from the first movie, just being okay. He's the leader of these armies. He's a great fighter. The people look up to him. He's a symbol for Rome, and the people want to see him win and want to give him mercy and things like that. But then I feel like it never really, and like he's also a lover of Lucilla in that same way. But I never feel like it really went past that. And I don't, when I think back on it, I don't know if I have of like, oh damn, Pedro like acted his ass off in that scene. I think he really delivered. Like I don't think he has a moment, and I don't think it's his fault. I think it's more on the script side and what the purpose of that character was. And then I feel like this movie just has more characters overall than that first movie did. So naturally, everyone's gonna have a little bit less time, other than like your main protagonist of Lucius, who gets a ton of content. So yeah, I don't feel like I really had a standout moment or two of his, and I liked a couple of his stuff, but overall felt a little too derivative. So I wasn't a big fan of him. I think I guess we should talk about these emperors a little bit. We haven't even talked about them at all yet.
Yes.
But to me, I think this was maybe one of the most disappointing parts of the movie. In that you can go back to our retro and like Commodus, I thought was such a well written, well acted character, a character who you could like see his motivations, but he was deeply flawed in his reasoning. He was creepy when he needed to be. He was a bit intimidating when he needed to be. He was such a weasel. I thought he was such a fun character and such a great villain and like a through line for the movie. I think in this movie it had a lot more sub villains and there's a lot more like things going on there. But I think in terms of like the two emperors, I just don't feel like I ever knew why were they so bad as emperors. I actually cannot answer that question. Can you answer that question for me? Like other than like they're kind of cocky. Like I don't actually know why they're a bad leader of Rome. Like I couldn't give you that answer because I feel like we just didn't really get any information on but like what they want to do. Like Commodus, they set up so much of like here's the systems he's dismantling. He's dismantling the Senate. He doesn't care about the sick people. All he cares about is the games. And like these emperors, they care about the games too. But like what else? I feel like we need a bit more. They were a bit too flat for me, I suppose.
So there was a brief little bit of dialogue where it was during the riot and it was at night and they were basically saying, oh, the Praetorians will handle this again like they did before. So it tells me, okay, the people have rioted over these emperors multiple times. So I think, okay, they have a lack of compassion for the people and they like with Commodus, you have him as an emperor who actually listened to the people in the arena reluctantly. Like he would show mercy or he would kill based on what the people were asking for. And I think that's what makes him very unique and different compared to these emperors where the people were like chanting for one thing or another and these emperors were just dismissing it, disregarding it and doing their own thing. So I think at the end the differences between these guys and the communists is that they don't care what the people want. They're just doing their decisions no matter what. And they're also on this like war hungry campaign, right? Whereas Communist, I think he was more or less like done with the war. His father had just done his like Germanic campaign. And so Communist is like, oh, we're going to do the games. We're going to take it easy. But these guys are like, okay, no, we're going to war. We got other places to conquer.
But don't people love, and even in this movie, like hitting it, like they're hitting it over and over again. Like people love Marcus Aurelius. He was an amazing leader, but wasn't he that same way of just like endlessly killing societies and going on war rampages, and even Maximus wanted to end them, but Marcus was like, nope, next battle, let's go take out more people.
He was, and I feel like there's still not enough that we could really kind of like in retrospect look back and kind of understand that because like yeah, he was off fighting his campaigns. He wasn't back home leading, right? Like the people that were in charge of Rome was I guess like more of like a corrupt Senate and some other corrupt politicians and whatnot. So we didn't really get to see that. He was just kind of like away from it, almost like he just didn't like it because Rome was sick and he was trying to get away from that and wanted to come back and make Rome what it could be, almost like after going through all these military campaigns. And this is my own perspective, so take it with a grain of salt. Going through all the military campaigns with Maximus is kind of what changed him and put him in the position like, okay, we need to go back to Rome after this campaign and make it better. Whereas, I mean, yeah, the fighting was done when Commodus was there and these guys were just corrupt and twin emperors just want to take over and conquer. Which, by the way, Joseph Quinn was fantastic
I think you did
as
great.
one
Yeah.
emperor. Like he was just, I thought he was super like cuckoo and crazy and all that.
But also terrifying at points when he needed to be, even though he wasn't never shown to be a competent fighter. I still found like when he, he always had the makeup around the eyes, and when like he stared you down, like you were scared. Whereas the other guy, I was never really scared of him. He was supposed to be more like the silly one, so I don't think that was ever like his purpose. But yeah, Joseph Quinn, I think he did a great job, given that it's a very flat character with like Commodus, very well-rounded character, even if he's like very evil and bad. I don't feel like this character really had that, but he still just did a great job with the performance. So
yeah.
did everything he could, given the material.
Kind of a side note. Do you know the Hound in Game of Thrones, right?
Is he in season 1?
Yes.
Oh, then I have seen season 1. Who's the actor?
He's got like the burnt face, long black hair. His brother was like the big guy, the mountain.
Oh man, I'm not a big Game of Thrones guy. I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna show you a
Was someone
quick photo.
reminiscent of this character for you? Joseph Quinn's
Well,
character.
this guy, he was actually in this movie. He
Oh,
was
okay,
a there was the main Praetorian Guard, who was he was leading the army basically. And when Denzel Washington's character was like, okay, we'll meet them at the gates, and the general's like, okay, and then they go out there, and so then you see this guy, Rory McNann, he's leading the whole army against the Legionnaires. So I just thought that was crazy because I haven't seen him in much anything else aside from Knuckles and Game of Thrones. So it's nice to see him in this too.
These brothers, how do you think they came into power?
Fuck, I have no idea. Jesus Christ. Again, 16 years, 16 short freaking years, and these guys just crept in there. Like, what was the Senate doing? They were doing something wrong.
Yeah. I find that something that I'm not gonna call it a plot hole because like it happens in between the movies, so it's like any reason could exist, but at no point did I feel like they were cunning or intelligent or good fighters or smart politically. Like, did they climb up through the ranks politically? It doesn't seem like it. So that's an issue I have. Is like I don't know how these guys got to where they are. That's kind of a problem for me, given that I'm supposed to fear them as like the leaders of Rome, like the most powerful civilization in at least this part of the world at this point in time. I don't know. It's unbelievable. I feel like I needed a little bit more explained there.
Yeah, I agree. And this is where I have to look into it to see if this is historically accurate too. If there was a point in time where these two twin emperors just actually took over Rome or whatnot, but I'm not sure, and that remains to be seen. But anyways, for the sake of the movie, yeah, I don't know their ancestry. I don't know their lineage. I don't know how they got in. If it, like you said, if it was through political power or through it was financial power, just how they did it, I just don't get it. Now, obviously, we have a void because when Lucius was sent away as a boy at the age of 12, we have no one leading Rome, no emperor. So,
Right.
I doubt that we had one in between Lucius running away, Commodus dying, and then the twins taking over. It just doesn't make sense because it was 16 years. So I imagine that, okay, you have the Senate that is supposed to take control and is supposed to be running things and put the power back into the people. Now that dream is slowly starting to fade away, and then you have these two twins show up, but it doesn't make sense. The Senate would be in control here. They would have Maximus's army as well, so things should be okay. But the only thing that we have to go off of is that this dream was just forgotten, and these two fucking lunatics took over the throne, and it's just like I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to me. But maybe it's just to, well, I don't know. It just makes the people to be just really, really dumb, and maybe
Yeah.
are they trying to make them dumb?
I know it's hard
just
to once again hard to root for the people of Rome. Like I want the civilian people to be safe and free and not actively at war and all these things, but by the end of
they're
this,
asking
it's
for
like,
it.
I don't know. Like, what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do? Like, they've given me no reason to want to root for them. So I'm like, I don't really care. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real tough one for me to figure out. My goodness.
How about we pivot then to Macronus, who Denzel Washington is rocking this role here because I feel like I've been very negative on this review so far, which is maybe how it goes. But I absolutely loved this character. As I mentioned in my non-spoilers, this is the character I was talking about. I think this is my favorite, maybe well-written character across the two movies. Commodus is maybe up there. I think he's very, very well done as well. But I think Macronus was so interesting and compelling, and it's funny how once again he is a character that is kind of mirroring Proximo from the first one. Now Proximo is a much more minor role in the first one, and he's not as big of a deal in like the third act of that movie. But in terms of like being the guy who runs this smaller arena outside of Rome, finds the protagonist gladiator character, putting them in the ring, kind of always whispering the sweet nothings into the emperor's or like Caesar's ear, and like kind of climbing up the political ladder from there. I think it starts out that way with as it does with Proximo, but I think Macronus is a character that is given so much more to do, and I think the path that he snakes his way through in this movie is so fun and engaging to me. So as I mentioned, they're kind of grabbing this gladiator who clearly he has the right read that this is the guy. This is the guy who's gonna have plot armor and is never gonna die. And the way he leverages that to just gain power slowly or quickly, even I guess through Rome is really really good. And the way he kind of just slowly drives a wedge between the brothers, and like obviously we've seen Caracalla the one brother who eventually turns on his brother, and the way that he just like pushes him into doing that by like kind of bringing up these insecurities that he has, and then like confirming his suspicions that his brother doesn't trust him or wants to go against him, and then literally to the point where he is holding the knife with him as he cuts his brother's throat. Like all of that I think is very very well done, and to me very believable for what this emperor was showing. Once again, I don't know how that guy came to power in Rome. That makes no sense to me, but at least for the character we were shown, I think it makes total sense how he's able to do that. And then coming up with this brilliant plan to throw Lucilla out there in the battle and have her sacrificed, which is going to cause it, like, one, it's going to take a huge player that's against him, and then two, it's going to make people hate Caracalla, and then he's immediately going to take him out and take the throne. I think like that is a brilliant plan, and I like it. He almost got away with it too for those meddling kids. I think he is just such a well done character. I just love seeing him weasel his way through all these different ranks, and as you filled me in with too, like being the one that kind of gains the information through his various through his various people that he trusts and trusts him, gains the information that the coup is happening, and then feeding that back to the brothers so that he can continue to make this plan happen that will put him in power rather than these other people, where he'd maybe still be the second, third, fourth in command. Just all of it is like really, really cool, really well done, and just such a fun pathway for a character. So big shout outs to Macronus.
Yeah, I really appreciate how he was the like opposite Proximo in this movie, and your
That's a
Proximo.
fun combo of words.
Yeah, like he like Proximo was just this former gladiator, former slave who got his freedom and just loved the arena and loved like Marcus Aurelius, and really did believe in Maximus for the right reasons, to the point where he was willing to help with this whole coup, set him free, everything like that. Whereas in this case, you have Macronus, who is just goes along this, he's introduced in the same way, goes along the same trajectory, but for him, he sees Lucius only as a means to benefit what he wants, and he is not turning to the good side, not helping with this rebellion. He is instead turning the evidence into the emperors, and that's that. And yeah, just how evil and conniving he gets when he's helping hold the hand of the emperor as he's slashing at his brother, and he executes him, and he's just then taking control. It's just amazing how fast he moves up, and it shows how corrupt the system is, because he used to serve in the army, as we learn, under
Yes,
Marcus
too,
Aurelius.
similar to
And then,
Proximo.
yeah, that's right. He ended up becoming a slave, getting his freedom, and then all of a sudden you have him working his way up to almost taking control of Rome. It's just absolutely crazy to think about that. And I would have been curious to see what the fallout would have been. Let's say Lucius did die, and you have Macronus just charging out ahead of his Praetorian army to face the legionnaires. What narrative was he going to spin? Like, oh, the gladiators like killed Lucilla or something like that. I don't know. Like, it's just there's some. I wonder what he was going to say because he's so good at being manipulative in this movie, and so I really do like his character. Yeah, he's got this weird commanding presence when he's on screen. So I really like that. And I like how he was able to figure out that Lucilla's son was Lucius and kind of like deduce all that. And I think that was pretty cool. But yeah, he was a really good character. And yeah, he loses a hand. Not great, but a very cool scene. Like when they were fighting, and he's like they're in the water, and he's just fucking jabbing his sword in there, and all you see is like the sword just like ding 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 hitting the armor plate of Maximus.
Aim a bit higher, dude. You could have so close.
He was so close. Oh man.
Lucius, who has not worn a helmet once in this whole movie. Always, even in the opening battle, I'm like, I know this is like a hot actor and you want to show him off, but like, come on, put a helmet on, dude.
Put a helmet on, yeah. I mean, they did with Maximus, so.
Yes, for a short while. I think, a couple other points with him is I love, because as I mentioned, like, okay, in that baboon fight, a lot of people did well, but I guess it was a really good read on him that what was different about Lucius, it was the rage. It wasn't that he was the most entertaining or even the most intelligent or strongest or biggest. It was that rage, which is one that's like great for a villain, right? Because like that rage comes from like this grief, which is the loss of his wife. So he's like taking this really distorted motivation and just like using it to his advantage. And I think that was ultimately his downfall, is he just never truly respected Lucius. He always just saw him as a tool, and that's where he was trying to make him the best fighter he could be, but only for a means to an end, and he never really saw him as a person. He never saw him as like someone who could claim his freedom or go against him, which is interesting because it seems like, okay, based on his backstory, it seems like he was maybe in a similar position as Lucius once was, and he overcame that, but he obviously felt so highly about himself, had such a big ego that he didn't feel like anyone else could do that. Only he was capable of such a thing. And obviously, Lucius breaks out of the cage at the end because of his friendship there with Ravi, and that's what leads to kind of the overthrowing of that whole battle going on. So that was really cool. And I had one question for you on the character's motivation for Macronus. Obviously, he wants to gain power of Rome, and one thing he says, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the quote in front of me. He says he wants Rome or the world to be one where anyone is able to claim their destiny. That's one thing he wants to fight for. Like, I don't know if he really means that or if he's just like saying that because that sounds like something a king would say. But like, I guess he's saying that, but like, I don't really know like what that's opposed to. Like, what is it currently in Rome? Because it kind of seems like anyone can kind of just claim their destiny if they just kill the right people. So
anyone
I don't know.
can be
I don't
emperor.
know what he felt like would have changed under his rule and his new ideology. Maybe we just need to see more of that, or if he actually did become the emperor, we would have got more of that. But I didn't really know what he actually wanted to change about Rome. That was one question mark I had.
Yeah, I don't know what he wanted to change either. And I mean, 16 years, that's all it takes. And then his change is someone else's change. And it's not great. So I don't know what he was thinking he was going to be instilling. I guess just more control for the people. And I'm just assuming, because me not knowing what his change was, all I can take with that is, okay, they're implying that his change is what Maximus wanted to do, and they're just reviving what Maximus and Marcus Aurelius's original plan was, right? Like, okay, a Senate that's speaking for the people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess I just mentioned character Ravi there. Very minor character in this movie, but I loved him. That's like one of my favorite characters too, for what he was. He's just someone I want to root for. I loved his look, right? Because he always had like the makeup. He had like the scars on his face that he had stitched over in a really cool way. He was just a nice guy. He just, he was trying to save lives. He's like, more people die because of the wounds than like in the arena themselves. And I thought he was someone that was really easy to root for and cheer for. And that was another character that I was kind of chuckling about, just the comparison to the first movie, where I forget when that guy in the first movie comes along, but the guy who's kind of the messenger, who can like pass the message along to Maximus's army, and then he like sneaks in when the Lucilla's like on that she's, I don't know, on that throne thing walking through the town, and he sneaks in and like has a quick conversation with her, and she gives him some coins. Whoever that guy was, like the guy in the ear, kind of spitting these messages along. I love that Ravi kind of gets that same role where he gets thrown on a horse and has to deliver this like very important message, and he has that trust. Obviously, he gives him that ring, which is a very, very important ring. So yeah, I liked Ravi as a character. He was fun.
Yeah, I liked him too. I liked how he just kept popping in. He was the on-site medic. He gave me this is a weird kind of comparison, but he gave me um I can't remember what his name was except for that he was the Magi in the Mummy. It's a very deep pull,
Okay, haven't
but
seen that one, so.
he just reminds me of that character and the way he's just yeah, just like how he's just like he's the underdog hero, and I really really like that. He kind of like saves the day, and yeah, so he was a cool character. I like him in this
Mhm.
movie.
Another question for you is near the so once Lucius is captured after the war, we go. The boats arrive on. I forget the name of that. It's like Port Patio or Portia, Porta, something like that. The town that's on the coast. Obviously, they
Hmm.
arrive there, and then there's that. That's where that first battle happens with that arena. But I was a little confused with the order of events because we have like it seemed like they arrived in Rome and then went to this town, but I guess they just arrived in this town. What I'm curious about is like they have this sequence early on in the movie where Lucius, after he does that first battle and Macrinus picks him out, he has that battle against like the guy who never loses. Once again, very similar character to like Titus or Titan, whatever that guy's name was in the first movie. Then they do that battle like inside in front of the two emperors. But like that wasn't in the city of Rome. That was still like in that coastal city because then like after that we have the scene of them all arriving at to Rome and they're all like commenting on like they don't tell you about the smells and like the people are just starving and dying out in the fields and they're arriving to Rome. But I'm like, would the emperors why would they go to this town just to like watch this tiny little battle between two people in a hall? I just didn't get why those characters were there. The pacing of that scene seemed a little off to me.
Yeah, the emperor's being there confuses me. Now the port city, that was the port city of Rome, so it was close, but the order of
Okay.
events is a little convoluted, and I don't understand why the emperors would have been there. It looked like it was just a big party that the
Right.
guy that one senator was throwing.
You would have think they would have gone to the arena that day and like watched the battle because they love that stuff. But maybe that arena is too
Yes,
small for them.
but I
It's not
don't
big
know
enough.
if well, yeah, because I guess the the baboon battle that I think already happened. Yes, that
It did,
already
yeah.
happened because Macrinus bought him, and so
Hmm.
then they arrived at the port city of Rome. And then this was again, it was supposed to be just like knuckles, right? Like just fist on fist kind of a fight, and it wasn't supposed to be like full gladiatorial
Right.
swords. When then
We want
obviously the
swords.
emperors, yeah, emperors just going fucking berserk for swords. So that unfolded, and then yeah, then after that, then you get the actual like arena battles, the rhino and stuff like that. So it is a little bit murky and convoluted, but
Yeah.
for me, it does kind of there's a pathway. There's a pathway
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. One thing I forgot about Macrinus is he has that scene where he's in like Lucilla, where Lucilla's locked up at this point, and he's in the chamber having a conversation with her. And I thought it was really purposeful that he like at that point he's really confident and like, he eats a couple grapes and like we commented in like the first movie like commented like eating the grapes like that's a very like emperor thing to do, just be fed the grapes, right? And so I thought it was very purposeful that he's like eating a couple grapes in that scene before he pops out. So just a quick mention there. I think my only last thoughts are like just things with like the very very ending. Do you have anything else like other than ending stuff that we haven't talked about or character? I think we've talked about most of the characters at this point.
No, I don't have anything, but I will highlight Tyler's comment in the chat. I think lavender was because Maximus had fields of lavender, which jogs a memory. I'm pretty sure he
Right.
did grow lavender, and he
Okay.
talked about how the smell of it reminded him of home.
Gotcha.
I think Tyler, I think you're spot on with that. So now it makes sense why
As
she's always
Tyler always
sniffing it.
is. Always
Yeah,
fun.
always spot on. So there you go. Lead us into your last note here.
Yeah, just a couple. I mean, one like kind of really leaning into the material of the first movie, going down to that I don't know what you'd call it, a tomb, I guess. Getting Maximus's armor, getting his sword, all of that was a little on the nose, but like, okay, that's his son at this point. That's kind of confirmed, so I think it makes sense. And like that armor is very symbolic. Clearly, like obviously, even the first movie is like, this is what this means, this is what that means, and he explains that to Lucius in that moment. So to wear that armor, I'm sure is a big moment for him. So all that cool. I was fine with it. Two things though. Lucilla, did she die for anything? You know, did anything come of her death? Did that change anything? I kind of feel like she just went out with a bit of a fizzle because there was so much chaos happening at that point that I don't think anyone even really noticed that she died other than Lucius. And I'm sure when they're picking up the pieces later, but it's also hard to tell like what the people of Rome feel about her. I don't know if they love her at that point just from Marcus Aurelius and if they still have admiration for her. But I kind of feel like she didn't die for anything in the way that Maximus. Well, Maximus in the first movie he died for something, and then obviously in the crawl it's kind of overwritten. But I don't know. Do you feel like she died for anything?
Not necessarily. I feel like again the people of this Rome are very easily persuaded because they're showing up there to watch people get killed. And in this case, it's Lucilla who's there, like strolled out there to get killed, and the people are being told, okay, that she was going to overthrow the crown, like that she was a bad chick, she's a traitor, she's a rebel, along with all these other senators.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. And again, we're supposed to root for Rome and its people, but it's hard to know exactly what like the Rome and the people here are thinking because they retaliate after one of the archers shoots one of their own. They didn't retaliate before. And while they were definitely obviously being disagreeable with how things were going, yeah, it's still very convoluted on them and just kind of like how they fit into it. So I don't know, maybe she's a martyr. Maybe that's the only takeaway I can see with this, but again, that happened after the fact. And I think at its core, she probably only serves as a chess piece for Lucius and Lucius's journey because it puts a target on Macrinus and Macrinus shoots her and basically like locks eyes with Lucius and Lucius just like charges after him on horseback and then executes him.
Yeah, I that's another thing I wondered is like I don't really know if anyone other than Lucius and Lucilla know that Macrinus took that shot because that was like the riots had already erupted at that point.
Yeah.
And I feel like what Macrinus was going to do is he's like, shit, this is not going the way I want it to, but I'm just going to take this shot. I can blame the Emperor for it, and I can say that's why I killed the Emperor because he took that shot, right? I guess I don't know if maybe that would have been his reasoning. So yeah, I kind of feel like Macrinus was expecting that no one was going to know that he was the one that fired that arrow at the end.
Yeah.
And then yeah, how did you feel about like the very last shot of him saying "Talk to me, Father," and then like that's when we fade to black? What do you think about that line of dialogue and that choice?
I for a split second thought, are we gonna see Russell Crowe just walking here, like?
Force
And I mean, we
ghost,
did.
yeah.
We saw Russell Crowe's like walking with his hand
Yes.
in the grass, the wheat field. But I thought we were actually gonna see him like appear in the Colosseum, like, my son, you must lead Rome now, or some crazy shit like that. Like anything could happen at this point.
Yeah. I'm glad that they didn't do that cheesy, fully cheesy. I think it was a little cheesy, but it could have been way cheesier if he actually did say something. I think he was more asking for a symbolic talk to me,
Yes.
a little ruffle in the wind, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's all of my notes, Taylor Field.
Perfect. Well, what do you got for your closing thoughts here and rating if you got one?
Yeah, I think I'm less mixed on this movie after the review. I'm more just like kind of negative on it a little bit. I feel like I'm still going to give it a decent number just because it was a fun time at the movies. It was still a fun watch, I suppose. But I feel like the more I break down some of these things, the more issues I tend to have a little bit. So I think I'm going to give this a 6.5. Maybe a 6. I'll give it a 6.4. That'll be my number at the end of the day. This is a very fun review, Taylor. I feel like we covered a lot of ground here. It was very heated. This is a fun one.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was juicy. Oh, when I got home, Madison was like, "How was it? Did you enjoy it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I enjoyed it. How this, that, this, and that." But I told her my number rating right away, and I think I'm gonna stick with it. I wasn't sure if it would change after kind of getting through this conversation and this review, but I think it's still
Okay.
pretty solid at a 7 out of 10.
Nice.
I am positive on it because I think the action was great. There were lots of cool sequences, and a lot of the actors delivered greatly. I think it was fantastic. But I think at its core, some of the writing and some of the trajectories of their characters' developments was a little bit off, and some things in retrospect damaging the first film's narrative. It really just kind of like sets me back a little bit, and it's unfortunate. I don't like that. I wish that this was kind of more like homage to that first one and like building off of that first one
Yeah,
instead of
definitely.
kind of like retroactively destroying it in slight regards. But again, that's just my opinion, and to each his own. I'm sure if you love this movie, then I'm happy for you, because there's lots to love with this movie. There really is, and it's an awesome film. I definitely do want to rewatch it because I think there's lots of good things to pull from this. So yeah, that is it. So we did it. We conquered the Coliseum, and we'll be back for Gladiator 3 if they ever do it.
Yeah, it's true. I will definitely be back. I think these are very fun movies that have a lot more depth than I thought they would before ever having seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into this episode of GeekVerse Podcast. We will be back next time, and we will see you in the search bar. Have a good one.
See ya.